Hey everybody, it's Glenn back in this video with the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Masters of the Universe Classics Hordak. Yet this ain't no ordinary action figure review, it's an action figure comparison with the Masters of the Universe Classics Hordak, which was released as the subscription figure for June 2009, I believe. So here they are going toe to toe and nose to nose with the June 2009 subscription Hordak on the left and the SDCC 2014 exclusive Hordak on the right. I guess for simplicity, I'll refer to them as Grey Hordak and Blue Hordak from this point on. Before we get deep into the comparison, allow me to kick off with my anecdotal introduction to the character and how it pertains to my history of action figure collecting. As I look back, the vintage Hordak figure represents my earliest recollection of my critical mind concerning action figures. As a kid, my mom would collect me from school, and on the days where she would do that, having come from grocery shopping beforehand, she would, if her budget after buying groceries allowed, surprise me to much glee with an action figure. Well, one day that action figure just happened to be Hordak, and I was instantly struck that he wasn't blue as he was in the Filmation She-Ra cartoon. While Hordak was the primary villain in that cartoon, his action figure was released in not the She-Ra Princess of Power line, but the more boy-centric He-Man and the Masters of the Universe line. With some design differences, the most noticeable being coloured not blue but grey. Over the years, that has created some divided loyalties among fans, with some preferring his appearance as encapsulated by the vintage action figure. Perhaps they never watched the cartoon, and the figure was their first and most lasting impression of this character. And to that end, when Hordak first appeared in the Masters of the Universe Classics line in June 2009, that figure was modelled after the vintage figure, as that was the remit of the line, to make over the original figures with a modern twist. But then, had your first experience of the character come from watching the cartoon, then the grey-skinned Hordak is somewhat jarring. Speaking myself as a kid of the 80s, nothing was more fun than sitting down to my favourite cartoon and playing along with my action figures. And if we accept, like many a cynical critic have, that the cartoons in the 80s were little more than advertisements for toy lines, then with Hordak we can say that the She-Ra cartoon missold us the character of Hordak. That is, until now, with the Filmation cartoon-inspired SDCC exclusive Hordak, which returned the character to cartoon accuracy with his blue skin. I've looked but can't find any reference to what led to the discrepancy between toy and cartoon, but in the bio on the card back of the SDCC Hordak, they do attempt to unify the two disparate appearances. You can pause now to read that at your own leisure, but to save you the pain, it states that on his arrival in Etheria, it's the natural magic in the atmosphere that's drawn Hordak's blue blood to the surface, colouring his skin. Returning to my mother and borrowing one of her sayings, you haven't got anything sensible to say, then don't say anything at all. I mean, a brave attempt at a connection, but ultimately, like most MOTUC cardback bios, smacks of forced desperation. The two action figures side by side, and that blue certainly pops, drawing the eye to it. Grey Hordak inherited a non-cartoon accurate cape from the vintage figure, and even if you are the biggest Filmation purist, I think you have to admit the addition of the cape does lend the character the majesty which, as leader of the evil horde, he deserves. That said, the absence of a cape and a shorter fur loincloth lends Blue Hordak a more practical and unencumbered leader in the field appearance. Taking a closer look, and this is where I have to call the Blue Hordak a Filmation-inspired Hordak and not Filmation Hordak. As while the blue skin is the most striking difference, it certainly isn't the only one. Disappointingly, the Blue Hordak has not received a new head sculpt, retaining the one from the grey version. It has an organic, almost skull-like feeling, which works well with the grey figure, but a villain with a skull for a head? Rings a bell. In the cartoon, Hordak's head had a geometry to it that made it a lot less organic looking and much more robotic, that made him stand aside from the Skeletor character design. To me, it's significantly different enough to justify a brand new head sculpt with this blue version, not to mention the absence of more pronounced bone motifs that form the edge of his hood and vest. Now looking at accessories, and both come with exactly the same staff, yet like the grey figure itself, the deco of his staff is superior, with metallics and dry brushing to create highlights. However, the lack of that level of attention to detail on the SDCC version is not something I hold against it, as I assume they were going for broader, flatter colours as per a cartoon. Grey Hordak comes with a crossbow, which was a signature accessory with vintage Horde figures. Here reimagined very creatively, taking it miles away from the simple white plastic of the original. And in another tip of the hat to the vintage figure, he also comes with what I've heard described as a bat shield. Yet as a fan of the cartoon all those years ago, I was thinking that this was some naive representation of Imp. Speaking of which, the blue Hordak comes with actual Imp. Hordak's shape-shifting sidekick cum pet is so creepy yet somehow cute. It features an articulated head and arms, and it's suitably small enough for him to perch on Hordak's shoulder, much as he did in the cartoon, but here really it's just resting there and requires some finagling to get him to stay put. And by way of clever reuse of parts from previous MOTUC figures, he comes with an interchangeable cannon arm, and boy are these arms tricky to swap. You need to be virtually as strong as He-Man, and while swapping them I didn't know what was going to break first, the action figure or my will. Hordak famously brandishes this cannon arm in the intro to the cartoon, so it hits that nostalgia spot in that place that makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. We also get a robotic hand that fits into the end of the cannon, yet it takes some posing to disguise the fact that in a neutral position, this leaves his left arm hanging considerably lower than the right one. Before I weigh in on my opinion as to which I think is the best representation of Hordak, let's take a quick look at Articulation. Now these hoods are actually separate pieces around the neck, sandwiched between the heads and the shoulders. Each of the heads, they do rotate independently of the hood, yet on the blue Hordak you can move both in unison, yet on the grey Hordak the hood is actually attached to the cape as one piece, which makes articulating it in that way much more difficult. At the shoulder, the arms of each rotate. They also move up this much and then back down. There's an upper arm swivel. Then there's a single jointed elbow and rotation at the wrist. There is an ab crunch, but unfortunately his vest does affect some of the range of articulation you can get out of that. Then there is also waist rotation. Then at the hips, the legs of each move out to the side and back in, to the front and to the back. There's upper leg rotation. There's a single jointed knee, and then at the ankle it is hinged but doesn't move very far forwards or backwards, and there is a tiny pivot to the foot. So all things considered, and I have to admit, I'm torn. It's a close one, but as a big fan of the cartoon, I have to go with the Grey Hordak. Surprised? Well, it's the very fact that I'm such a big fan of the cartoon that I just can't go with a cartoon-inspired one. I thank Matty for making this blue one, as at the very least it may save some fans from buying a second Grey Hordak and painting it blue, and if I disregard the accessories, which are really good, then he is little more than a redeco of the grey one, and ultimately it's compromised by elements of the sculpted design from the first figure that a simple redeco cannot resolve. I recently reviewed the Madame Raz figure, which looked like she stepped straight out of the cartoon, and that's how I want to feel about this Hordak. Yeah, I just don't. It's a missed opportunity that they came close yet decided not to go the extra mile and completely nail it, and with Masters of the Universe Classics now winding down, I fear that this is the closest we will ever come to a true Filmation cartoon Hordak. It's close, but just not close enough. Anyway, let me know how you guys weigh in on this in the comments below. Also share and subscribe, and help me out by giving this video a big thumbs up. For my previous action figure comparison featuring X-Men Storm, click this video, or for my review of Madame Raz, click this video. Alternatively, check out the description beneath this video for links to my Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Click those links and connect with me there too. Hope to see you in my next video. Bye.